I changed my name because I didn't want anything to do with that man. I didn't want his name. I didn't even want to acknowledge that he existed. I'm not even going to speak his name. I know you had a difficult relationship with your old man Hank, but at least he loved you. I was nothing but a burden to mine. Especially after my mum left. She walked out when I was 6, you see. I remember she sent me off to school in the morning, and then in the afternoon she just wasn't there to pick me up. I waited and waited with my teacher. In the end, they had to call my dad to come and get me. I've not seen her since. There was talk amongst the neighbours about she was a thrill seeker, ran off for adventure, or she was having an affair with another man. It doesn't really matter the reason behind why she left. It matters that she left me alone in that house with that man. She left to get away from him, I know that. Don't get me wrong. Neither of my folks are worth shit. But he drove her out of the house. He would never hit my mum. That wasn't his style. Or me, after she went. He chased her out of the house with his tongue. Everything she did was wrong. She was worthless and ugly and lucky to have him. When she left, he turned that all on me. I was my mother's daughter. I looked like her, I'd end up exactly like her. He wasn't bothered about my life. Not in my interests, not in my schooling. In fact, whenever I talked about school, he just laughed. He said that it was a waste of my time because I was just going to grow up, find a gullible man and marry him and leech off him. As I grew into a teen, he became obsessed with this idea. By then, I was taking care of myself. Doing all the chores at the house, cooking the dinner, doing the washing and the ironing of his clothes. I never got so much as a thank you. He only ever talked to me in grunts or with as few words as possible. Unless he was ranting on about how I would turn out like a slag, just like my mother. Then, of course, I couldn't shut him up. There was a stream of women in and out of the house. Some of them were nice, most of them weren't, but all of them were regulars at the pub that he drank at. People thought he was this charming man until they saw that side of him, the side he kept especially for me. Anyway, there were always these women around, and yet none of them told me what it was like to grow into one. No one told me about puberty. I had sex education lessons at school, but it's not the same. No one took me bra shopping. I had to shoplift my first bra. The rest I found by sifting through charity shops. Now, they normally don't accept donations of bras, you see, but every so often you would find one with the tags on, brand new. They never fit me. They were always too loose or too tight. Do you know what it's like to be 13 and be wearing a bra that pulled my brand new tits right up to my chin? Wasn't fun. It was the same situation when I got my first period. It came along when I was alone in the house one Saturday morning, so gradually that I didn't really notice until I was doubled over with cramps. I had nothing in the house to deal with it. No pads, no tampons, nothing. There I was, sitting on the toilet, a trail of blood drying down my leg, my belly cramping, my jeans and pants were in a red pile at my feet. When the pain went away a little, I cleaned myself up and I tried to make a pad out of some kitchen roll. Because I couldn't rely on my old man's girlfriends, I asked the neighbours. In the end, it was one of the middle-aged women next door who bought me pads and tampons and showed me how to use them. She told my dad when he came home, half cut from the football, but he didn't say anything. At least not until the next morning. We were sitting at the kitchen table and he made some begrudging remarks about how I'd be getting a monthly allowance to pay for my women's things. And he wanted to see the receipt to make sure how I'd spent the money. He told me that now I was getting my period, I was more likely to be running around with God knows how many lads, just like my mum, because she was a real hussy at school. He said he didn't care what I got up to, or who with, or how many. He just didn't want any trouble brought to his door. I'd face it alone. Well, I was 14, almost 15, and the gang I used to hang around with would go camping down by the canal on Saturday nights. I was always invited because, not to brag or anything, but I was always kind of pretty. If I was there, the boys would definitely come. There would be a cheap bottle of cider and a pack of cigs, and I'd end up in a tent kissing one of the lads. I'd never let anything else happen though. Maybe I'd let them grab my boob, but nothing more than that. It was kind of a point of pride for me that it was almost like with every boy I said no to, I was proving to my old man that I wasn't easy. That all went well until one of the boys wouldn't take no for an answer. I remember his hands pinning me down. his right hand was reaching down with his left hand to do God knows what. But before anything could happen, I kneed him in the balls and ran away. So flash forward a few years. I'm 18, living with a friend, working as a dental hygienist. I'd cut off all contact with my dad by this point. I hadn't seen or spoken to him in 6 months. Also, up until that point, I never really had a boyfriend or even had sex. Who would believe that, right? Me, a virgin at age 18. At the time, I just didn't trust boys. The only experience I'd had with men was the boys in the tent, and of course my old man. I think I was still trying to prove him wrong. Well, I met this guy called Jamie, and he was so charming and handsome. I fell for him hard. I still made him wait though. Not that it did me any good. I thought he was genuine, but the moment he got what he wanted from me, he was gone. I was heartbroken and I went off the rails a bit. I spent a year sleeping around, telling myself I was doing it to be liberated, that I was having fun. Really, it was like sticking my 2 fingers up at my old mum. It was like telling him that I didn't give a fuck what he thought. I guess the escorting was just an extension of that. My flatmate introduced me to her friend, Harmony, who was this glamorous, high-class escort working for a madam called Dilwyn Evans. Of course, Harmony wasn't her real name, just the name that she used to work under. She told me all about the lifestyle, and I jumped at the chance to have a go. I liked the idea that not only would I be sticking 2 fingers up at my old man and sleeping with whoever I wanted, but I'd also get paid for it as well. It felt like I had a power, you know? I started working at Dilwyn's agency and I chose to go by the name Becky. I'd only been with them for about a year when I started to see things that I didn't really like about the whole situation. As time went on, I didn't like the idea of the agency taking a percentage of the money that I earned with my body. And I didn't like the idea that the girls seemed to live from party to party. They spent all their money like it was water. I'd brought myself up to be careful with money because I never had any. So I set myself up to work alone. I created a profile and I created a profile on adult websites. I told my regular clients that I would give them a discount for 3 months if they booked directly with me. Just after I started working for myself, so to speak, I decided to make Becky my real name. I was in a taxi on my way to meet a client when we drove past this bar. And there was my old man. He was sitting on the curb, passed out, his head bent into his lap, with a half-drunk pint in his hand. Here was the man who had spent all my childhood telling me I was worth nothing. I made a choice there and then. I wasn't going to spend all my life being the silly girl, working out her daddy issues. I wasn't going to be Louisa Hughes. I was going to be Becky Doyle. I was going to escort just long enough to make a nice little nest egg, maybe enough to put a deposit on a house. That was the plan. And then I met you and everything changed. Just after I started working for myself, so to speak, I decided that I wanted to make Becky my real name. I was in a taxi on my way to meet a client and we drove past this dive bar and there was my old man. He was sitting on the curb, passed out, with his head bent forward in his lap and a half-drunk pint in his hand. He was the man who had spent my entire childhood telling me I was worth nothing. I made a choice then and there that I wasn't going to spend my life being the girl, the silly girl working on her daddy issues. I wasn't going to be Louisa Hughes. I was going to be Becky Doyle. I was going to escort for just long enough so that I would have a nice little nest egg, or maybe enough to put a deposit on a house. That was the plan. And then I met you. And my plans changed. I don't want to do it anymore. Don't get me wrong, I don't regret it. I've met a variety of different people. Only a few of them have been cunts. A couple were real pieces of shit. But most of them were just normal guys. You hired me because you wanted to know what was missing from your life. And the weird thing about it is, I saw that you wanted to know the thing that was missing from your life. I saw the thing missing from my life. It was the same thing. The chance of an adult relationship. Growing up and moving on and not worrying about proving my old man wrong or getting back at him. You know, it's funny now that I think about it. I'd already decided to quit escorting. I took my profile down from all the sites. I got myself a new phone number. And 2 days later, a phone call came about my great uncle's will. funny how things happen. It's like fate was waiting for me to make my own mind up before intervening. Anyway, that's my story. I hope you understand. I needed you to know that once upon a time I was Louisa, but also I'm not her anymore. Now I'm Becky. And I might not know exactly who she is yet. There may be some parts of the new me I haven't discovered, but I'm excited at the prospect of finally becoming myself.